Whether Rayman fans like it or not, the Rabbids series has really taken off. There are now 8 Rabbids games, and Ubisoft are currently planning for a TV show and a film. I never really had any problems when it came to the Rabbids, as I had never played any of the games until Rayman Raving Rabbids last year. I had a decent time with the game, but it wasn't anything special. My main problem with that game was that it felt rushed, and if it was more fleshed out, then it could have been something great. This is why I decided to play Rayman Raving Rabbids 2 for the Nintendo Wii. It was only released 1 year later after the original, but it seems like they would have had some time to fix the problems the first one had, especially because they were trying to turn the Rabbids into a franchise. So the question is Rayman Raving Rabbids 2 an example of a sequel done well, or a cheap cash-in? Let's check it out. The game starts with a live action cutscene showing that the Rabbids have now started taking over the human world. It then goes into another cutscene where Rayman is sneaking into a mall to try and infiltrate the Rabbids invasion forces. Unlike the cutscene at the beginning of the first game, the cutscene here is entertaining, with some childish but enjoyable jokes. While the game starts on a good note, it becomes disappointing as there is no story mode. The 2 opening scenes is everything you get in terms of a story. Now, I can't complain too much as this is a minigame collection and really a story isn't needed, but the first game had one, so they could have come up with some sort of story here. They already had the setup of the Rabbids coming to the human world and Rayman chasing after them, which, despite the setup making no sense, there's a lot they could have done here and they chose to do nothing. As previously mentioned, Rayman Raving Rabbids 2, like the first game, is a minigame collection. The game has 54 minigames which uses the Wiimote and Nunchuck in different ways. For example, you could have to shake the Wiimote quickly, use the Wiimote and Nunchuck to steer, or maybe use the Wiimote pointer. If you're someone who doesn't like to move a lot when playing games, you should stay clear of this one. There's much more waving your arms than in the first game, and overall the minigames just aren't as creative. There are a few minigames that are good and work well, but for the most part they just aren't fun to play. The fact that there's only 54 of them means that you will get sick of them pretty quickly, and there's little enjoyment to be had from them. I'm sure someone under 10 would enjoy them, as each one has a silly setup involving the Rabbids, but personally I found them quite dull to play. Let's talk about what the game offers in terms of content. As there is no story mode, to play the minigames you have to play the trips. There are 5 trips, each based on a continent, and features 6 minigames in each. For each minigame you get a score, and at the end you also get an overall trip score which can be posted to online leaderboards. That's pretty much everything the game has to offer. You just select a trip and play through the minigames. There's nothing else to the game and no reason to keep you playing once you've played every single minigame, which doesn't take that much time. Usually with a minigame collection there is something outside of just playing the minigames to motivate you to replay them, such as the party boards from Mario Party or all the modes from Wii Party, but there is no such mode here. It's quite frankly embarrassing how little there is in this game. If I'm being fair, there are also costumes you unlock, but you unlock them by playing the trips and they only really matter in multiplayer. Speaking of multiplayer, it's clear that this game was aimed to be played only in multiplayer, which is why the single player was ignored. The multiplayer is more fun than the single player but still suffers from the same problems, as the minigames are still just okay at best and there's no proper mode to allow competitive play. There is one mode I haven't mentioned though, and that's the shooting gallery. The on-rail plunger shooter from the first game returns, only instead of being part of the normal minigames, they now have their own separate mode. The plunger levels in the first game were great, but they somehow found a way to suck out all the fun from them. Instead of having in-game graphics, they now use footage of a real-life place, and you have to shoot all the rabbits that appear. It takes away most of the personality of them, and playing them is just a complete chore. If they kept them as part of the main game and didn't use the terrible video footage, then they might have added more to this game, but instead they're just a boring, pointless extra. My reviews normally aren't as short at this, but I have nothing else to comment on in Rayman Raving Rabbids 2. The minigames aren't as fun or interesting as the first one, and there's so little content that it's hard to believe that anyone paid full price for this game. It amazes me how much of a step backwards this game is compared to the first one, and it's actually made me look back on the original more kindly, because at least that game was fun at times. If you have kids who find the Rabbids funny, then this game is worth checking out, as long as you can buy it cheap. For everyone else, there is nothing here worth playing and is a completely pointless experience. My score is 3.0 out of 10. While the game isn't actually horrible to play, the fact that there's so little here means that it hardly feels like a game at all.